Here we go again. What happens when 15 anti-gun states try to barge into a federal lawsuit to protect Joe Biden's unconstitutional gun control? Well, a federal judge in Alabama just told them, no way, Jose. This, at first, sounds like a huge win for the Second Amendment, except the court said that United States Attorney General Pam Bondi is doing a great job defending Joe Biden's engaged in the business rule all by herself. Let's break down exactly what this ruling means and why the NRA and the individual gun owners are involved in the first place, and what comes next here in the fight to dismantle Joe Biden's unconstitutional ATF rules. Ugh, Bondi. Welcome back to Guns and Gadgets, your home for Second Amendment news. All things good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button down below. It's free so that you don't miss any updates that the mainstream media won't cover, like this one. First, a word from our sponsor. There was a time in my life where I was drowning in credit card debt. I could never catch up because the interest was destroying me. The future was not looking good. Now, freedom means being in the driver's seat, on the road and in life. But debt hijacks that. When you're buried in credit cards, loans, or medical bills, you're not calling the shots anymore, the banks are. That's why more folks are turning to PDS Debt. They've helped hundreds of thousands get back in control, pay less, and move forward with confidence. Take the wheel. Take your future back. PDS Debt goes beyond the numbers to understand your unique financial situation. PDS Debt has customized options for anyone struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills. They understand your specific scenario and will help provide alternative solutions to becoming debt-free. There's no minimum credit score required. They're here to help you save more, pay off your debt faster, and start putting money back where it belongs, in your pocket. PDS Debt is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, boasts thousands of 5-star reviews on Google, and holds a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. Why? Because PDS has helped hundreds of thousands of people get out of debt. You're 30 seconds away from being debt-free. Get your free assessment and find the best option for you right now at pdsdebt.com/GNG. That's pdsdebt.com/GNG. pdsdebt.com/GNG. If I had needed this product today, it's what I'd use. Thanks to PDS Debt for sponsoring this video. So here's what's going on this case. It's Butler v. Bondi, and it's in the Northern District of Alabama. Now, the plaintiffs include Don Butler, David Glidewell, and yes, the NRA. They're challenging one of Joe Biden's worst anti-gun creations, and that's the ATF's so-called final rule on what it means to be engaged in the business of selling firearms. Now, if you remember, Biden's ATF put this rule out in April of 2024. And the idea was to massively expand who needs a federal firearms license, effectively turning ordinary gun owners like you and me, folks who occasionally might sell a firearm or trade a firearm, into supposed dealers overnight. Now, the rule is vague, it's overreaching, and it's a direct attack on private gun ownership. The lawsuit argues that the rule exceeds ATF's authority, it violates the Constitution, and it's flat out arbitrary and capricious. Now, back in November of 2024, the court actually denied a request for a preliminary injunction. Now, the judge said that the plaintiffs didn't show enough proof that they were personally had standing at that stage, but he promised to move the case quickly, so he set an expedited schedule, which brings us to this. Then something happened that was pretty big. Donald Trump won the 2024 election. And that's when these 15 states panicked. We're talking New Jersey, Colorado, Hawaii, Michigan, Minnesota, North Carolina, Nevada, Rhode Island, Arizona, Vermont, Washington, Connecticut, Oregon, Delaware, and Maryland. And they all filed to intervene in this case. What was their argument? Well, they said that Trump won, and once he was sworn in, he wouldn't defend Biden's ATF rules, and he might even try to dismantle them. I wish. They pointed to Trump's campaign promise to roll back every Biden attack on the Second Amendment. Hasn't happened. They even cited a New York Times article predicting Donald Trump's Department of Justice would reverse course. They didn't. In other words, these states wanted to jump in and take over the defense of Biden's gun control because they didn't trust that the federal government would keep pushing it. That's an unconstitutional rule, but whatever. After his inauguration, Trump signed an executive order directing the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to review all of Joe Biden's gun regulations to see which ones infringe on the Second Amendment. All of them. And by April of 2025, the DOJ and ATF confirmed that that review was underway, including this very final rule we're talking about. So the rule is still effective for now. It's in effect, but it's hanging on by a thread. Now let's fast forward to last week, September 22nd, 2025, when Judge Corey Mays issued a detailed order. And here's the bottom line from that. The state's motion to intervene was denied. Now the court said that the states failed across the board. He said, number one, it was the untimely motion that was filed. They waited too long. The judge pointed out that they knew Trump won in November, yet they waited until mid-January, right before a major briefing deadline, to file their brief. And that delay would have slowed down the whole case and prejudiced the plaintiffs. Number two, the judge said there was no legally protectable interest by the states. The states claimed that they had financial and quasi-sovereign interest in keeping the rule, saying that it made it easier to trace guns and lower law enforcement costs. The judge wasn't buying that, and he said that their arguments were speculative, purely economic, and not legally protectable. Number three, the judge said, was adequate representation, and it already existed. The states argued that the federal government wasn't defending the rule hard enough, and that the judge there flat out rejected that. He said that Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice had filed a massive 70-page brief defending the rule. And even under Trump, the Department of Justice continued to defend the rule. There was no proof that the feds abandoned the fight. In other words, the states don't get to hijack the lawsuit, and Pam Bondi still defending the engaged in the business rule. This ruling is significant. Think about it like this. If the court had let those 15 states in, they could have dragged this case out for years, burying it in motions and appeals just to keep Biden's anti-gun rule alive. That was their strategy. It was to stall, confuse, delay, and outspend the average gun owner. But the court slammed that door closed. The plaintiffs, ordinary Americans, and the NRA still have a clear path forward to challenge the rule, even without help from Bondi or the Trump administration. And remember, this isn't just about the ATF regulation or just one regulation. This is about whether unelected bureaucrats can redefine federal laws on firearms whenever they want. Rules are not laws. If Biden's ATF gets away with this, they can criminalize normal gun transactions without ever going through Congress. So, where do we go from here? Well, the case is still alive. Summary judgment motions are pending, and the court will rule on whether the ATF's final rule stands or falls. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi and Donald Trump's Department of Justice are still reviewing the rule. That could mean that they'll eventually scrap it themselves, but until then, the courts will decide. I'd rather have a court strike it down. That way we get a final ruling on it, not just some president who can rekindle it whenever they want. And most importantly, this ruling keeps anti-gun states from interfering in a lawsuit that could set nationwide precedent on how far the ATF can go. Now, this is a solid win without Pam Bondi's help, but the fight isn't over. Biden's ATF is still clinging to the unconstitutional rule. And yes, there are still Biden ATF holdovers. We need to stay vigilant. We need to keep supporting these lawsuits. And we need to make sure that the federal agencies know that they cannot regulate away our God-given rights. We don't get it from you. You can't have it. If you found this breakdown helpful, please hit that like button so that more people will see it on this platform. Share the video with your friends and family who need to know exactly what's happening in the Second Amendment world. And as always, subscribe to Guns and Gadgets so you don't miss out on the truth on the Second Amendment fight. Until next time, stay safe, stay free, and stay armed. Carry on, America. God bless.